They don't say it out loud, but you can feel it in your bones. People shift when you walk into the room. Their smiles tighten into something forced, something fragile. Their laughter fades like someone turned down the volume. Conversations die mid-sentence, hanging in the air like unfinished thoughts no one dares complete. It's not because you're rude or arrogant or even doing anything wrong. It's because there's something about you, an invisible intensity radiating from your core that they cannot explain but absolutely cannot ignore. A presence that fills the space before you even speak. You ask deep questions that pierce through surface-level bullshit like a knife through paper. You listen closely, not just to respond with your rehearsed reply, but to truly understand what's being said beneath the words. You speak with purpose, choosing words that carry actual weight instead of filling silence with noise. And when you look someone in the eyes, really look at them, not through them, but into them. They glance away. They break contact like you've touched something raw. They retreat into themselves, suddenly fascinated by their phones, their drinks, anything but your gaze. You've been told you're too serious, too intense, that you overthink everything. Friends say you need to lighten up, and you stop being so deep all the time. Colleagues call you hard to read like it's a character flaw. Family members joke that you're too deep for your own good, laughing nervously as they say it. The message is always the same. Tone it down, blend in, stop making people uncomfortable just by existing. But what if you're not too much? What if, just like Carl Jung believed, your presence is charged with something far more powerful than social awkwardness or personality quirks? What if what they're feeling isn't about you being wrong, but about them not being ready? An aura, not the fluffy New Age kind wrapped in crystals and incense, but a psychological force, a silent energy that challenges others without you saying a single word. A presence so authentic, so unfiltered, so real that it becomes uncomfortable for anyone still hiding behind a mask. Because here's the truth most people won't tell you, the truth they themselves don't even fully understand. People aren't afraid of you. They're afraid of what you reflect back to them. Their own insecurities staring them in the face. Their own fears they've spent years burying. Their own carefully constructed masks that suddenly feel paper-thin in your presence. The false versions of themselves they've spent years, sometimes decades, perfecting and protecting. And so they withdraw. They avoid eye contact. They gossip about how intense or weird you are. They shrink themselves, dumbing down their words, just to feel safe around you. Not because you're dangerous or threatening or trying to hurt them, but because your energy is honest. And honesty, real, raw, unfiltered honesty, unsettles people who have built their entire lives on pretending. Carl Jung spent his entire life studying this phenomenon, the psychic energy that radiates from those rare individuals who have confronted their shadow and stepped into their true self, the invisible force that separates the conscious from the unconscious, the authentic from the performative, the real from the acted. This video will reveal the 13 signs your aura might be silently overwhelming to others. Not because you're broken or flawed or need to change who you are, but because you are rare, and in a world addicted to comfort, validation, and surface-level connection, a world where everyone's performing a carefully edited version of themselves, rare energy terrifies people. Your authenticity threatens their performance, and they'll do anything to make you the problem rather than face the truth you represent. Most people think of an aura as something spiritual, a glowing field of colors floating around the body like some mystical Instagram filter. But Carl Jung had a much deeper, more psychological understanding. To Jung, your aura wasn't made of light or vibrations you could measure with machines. It was made of energy, psychic energy. Not the kind you can see or quantify, but the kind you can feel in your bones when someone walks into a room. He believed that every person radiates a subtle but incredibly powerful field of psychological presence shaped by your thoughts, your emotions, your experiences, and most importantly, your unconscious mind. And this energy speaks long before you open your mouth. It shows up in the way you walk into a room, in the way people react to you without knowing why, in the vibe you carry, even in complete silence, in the tension that fills the air when you simply exist in a space. Jung called this phenomenon the unconscious transmission of the self, and it comes from the parts of you most people ignore, suppress, or deny. Your shadow, your pain, your unprocessed trauma, your deepest truths. The more you confront those hidden parts, the more willing you are to face what lives beneath the surface, the more your energy fundamentally changes. You begin to carry a different kind of presence, a presence that isn't shaped by social masks or desperate grabs for shallow approval, but by self-awareness, psychological depth, and inner alignment. And people feel it, even if they can't explain it, even if they don't have the vocabulary to describe what's happening. They sense that you're different. It's in the way your eyes hold real emotion instead of manufactured politeness, in the calmness of your silence when everyone else is performing, in the quiet intensity of your gaze that seems to look through them instead of at them. Jung believed this kind of aura could unconsciously trigger others. Not because you're doing anything wrong or trying to intimidate anyone, but because your energy exposes what they've spent their whole lives trying to hide. Their insecurities, their fears, their false selves, the gaps between who they pretend to be and who they actually are. This is why people might keep their distance, why they might misjudge you, why they might feel intimidated even when you're being soft-spoken and kind. Your aura, the energy of your real self, stripped of pretense, is speaking directly to their unconscious mind. And not everyone is ready for that conversation. Most people never will be. Understanding this concept is key to everything Jung taught, that we're not just minds or bodies walking around. We are fields of psychic influence, living symbols, walking mirrors. And the more honest you become with yourself, the more you integrate your shadow, the more intense your aura becomes to others. The more threatening your mere existence feels to those still hiding. Sign number 1. People say you're too intense. Even when you're just being honest, you speak from a deeper place. Not to impress, not to dominate, not to win arguments or prove you're smarter than everyone else, but to genuinely connect. Yet somehow, your words always seem to go too far. You say what others carefully avoid. You name what people keep hidden in the dark corners of their consciousness. You bring truth into places that were built on illusion, and it makes people profoundly uncomfortable. They say you're too serious, too much, or too deep. But what they really mean is, you make me feel things I'm not ready to feel. You force me to think about things I've spent years avoiding. You remind me of the parts of myself I've buried. Carl Jung believed that some people carry energy that awakens the unconscious in others. It forces them to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves, about life, about their carefully constructed identities that are held together with denial and social conditioning. So when you speak, it's not just words landing in their ears, it's energy, it's presence, it's psychological depth cutting through their defenses. And for people who live on the surface, skating by on small talk and pleasantries, that feels like an existential threat. Your intensity isn't aggression. It's not arrogance. It's not you trying to be difficult or edgy. It's emotional honesty in its purest form. And very few people can hold that kind of authenticity without flinching, without retreating, without labeling you as a lot. Sign number 2. Small talk feels physically draining to you. You can feel it instantly. The shallow, scripted energy of surface-level conversations hitting you like a wave of exhaustion. How's the weather? What do you do? Did you see that show last night? How about this traffic? The same recycled questions, the same empty responses, the same meaningless dance of social obligation. It's not that you're rude. You try to engage. You nod, smile, respond appropriately. You play the game because you know it's expected. But deep down, something inside you resists with every fiber of your being. Your soul actually recoils from the inauthenticity of it all. Jung believed that people with a strong connection to their unconscious feel physically repelled by inauthenticity, and small talk often serves as a shield, a protective barrier designed to avoid real connection, real vulnerability, real human interaction. So when you're trapped in those conversations, your aura sends a different signal beneath the surface. This isn't real. Let's talk about something that actually matters. Let's connect on a human level instead of performing this social theater. But that energy disrupts the script. It breaks the comfortable social illusion everyone agreed to maintain. And people sense it even if you never say a word out loud. They might see you as standoffish, cold, or antisocial. They might think you're judging them. But the truth is simpler and more painful. Your soul is starving for realness, for authentic human connection, for conversations that go beneath the surface. And your aura makes that hunger visible to everyone around you. Sign number 3. You attract confessions and emotional dumping. Strangers tell you their life story in grocery store checkout lines. Friends come to you when they're breaking down, even ones you haven't spoken to in months. Acquaintances open up about their deepest traumas within minutes of meeting you. You've been called a therapist more times than you can count, even though you never asked for the role, never trained for it, never volunteered to carry everyone else's pain. This isn't a coincidence. This isn't random chance. Jung believed that some individuals carry an unconscious archetype of the healer, even if they aren't in a healing profession, even if they have no formal training, even if they're barely holding their own life together. Your aura radiates depth, stillness, and emotional safety. People feel like they can open up to you even when they barely know your name. But here's the cruel paradox that you've probably already discovered. You rarely feel seen in return. You listen, you hold space, you absorb their pain, their trauma, their darkness. But few ever ask how you're doing. Few ever think to return the favor. Few ever consider that you might be drowning beneath the weight of everyone else's emotional baggage. This creates a strange, suffocating loneliness. One where you're constantly surrounded by other people's emotions, yet starving for genuine connection. Your aura might be magnetic for those in pain, but it also intimidates those who fear their own darkness. So you become a dumping ground instead of a human being, a resource instead of a person. Sign number 4. People seem to avoid eye contact with you. You walk into a room and you feel it immediately. People shift their weight. They glance at you, then quickly look away. They talk softer when you're near. They act different, more guarded, more careful. It's subtle but completely unmistakable. Sometimes they avoid you altogether, finding excuses to be somewhere else. Other times they stare at you like you're a puzzle they're trying to solve, studying you from a distance but never approaching. But they say nothing. They never acknowledge what's happening. Carl Jung taught that when you've integrated parts of yourself that others deny, when you've faced your shadow and owned your darkness, you unconsciously mirror what they've suppressed. Your eye contact becomes more than a social gesture or polite acknowledgement. It becomes a psychic encounter, a confrontation with truth. They're not just seeing you when they look into your eyes. They're seeing themselves through you. They're seeing the parts of themselves they've buried, denied, rejected. And if they're not ready for that reflection, if they're still hiding from their own truth, they'll flinch, they'll retreat, they'll label you as intimidating, intense, or too much, even if you're being completely kind and respectful. Your presence demands honesty, not because you verbally ask for it, not because you're trying to force anything, but because your aura speaks before your words do. Your energy says, "I see you, the real you, not the mask." And that terrifies most people. Sign number 5. Your presence triggers strong reactions, without you doing anything. You're just sitting there, saying nothing, doing nothing out of the ordinary. You're not trying to stand out. You're not performing or seeking attention. Yet somehow, someone reacts. They get defensive out of nowhere, irritated for no apparent reason. weirdly cold and hostile. And you're left sitting there wondering, what the hell did I do? What just happened? Carl Jung believed that when someone carries powerful, integrated energy, when they've done the inner work most people avoid, it disturbs the unconscious of those around them, especially those who are actively hiding from parts of themselves. Your presence acts like a psychological mirror. People see parts of themselves reflected in you, parts they don't want to acknowledge, their insecurity, their shame, their envy, their unfulfilled potential, their cowardice. You don't even have to speak. You don't have to do anything. Your energy does all the talking. This is the silent power of a developed aura. You do not need to command attention or demand respect because your very existence challenges others to confront who they really are beneath their social masks. And most people don't like what they see. They don't want to face it. So they project their discomfort onto you and call you the problem. Sign number 6. You can't tolerate fake personas and people feel it. You've never been able to stand masks. The fake laughter that sounds hollow and rehearsed, the shallow personas people put on like costumes, the endless, exhausting need to perform for validation. You see through it instantly. You feel it in your gut before your conscious mind even catches up. This sensitivity isn't judgment or superiority. It's perception. Pure, unfiltered perception. Jung believed that when someone has integrated their shadow, their dark, rejected traits, their uncomfortable truths, they develop what he called psychological wholeness. This gives them a kind of X-ray vision for fragmentation in others. They can sense when someone is performing instead of being. So when you're around someone who's posturing, pretending to be someone they're not, putting on a show, your aura sends a subtle but unmistakable signal. Drop the act. I see who you really are. The performance isn't working on me. Most people aren't ready for that level of transparency. They might get nervous around you, overly defensive, aggressive even, or they'll just label you as intense, judgmental, or hard to be around, and keep their distance. Not because you're actually exposing them verbally, but because your energy won't let their illusion breathe. Your presence suffocates their false self, and that feels like death to them. Sign number 7. You make people second-guess themselves. You ask questions that others carefully avoid. You challenge assumptions everyone else accepts without thinking. You don't accept normal just because it's common or comfortable. And because of that, people second-guess themselves around you. They get flustered. They stumble over their words. They doubt things they usually say with complete confidence. They try to justify beliefs and behaviors they normally wouldn't even think about questioning. This isn't arrogance on your part. It's not manipulation or some calculated power play. It's the psychic weight of your clarity. Jung said that when a person embodies deep self-awareness, when they've questioned everything and rebuilt themselves from the ground up, they become a living contradiction to the collective unconscious. Your clarity exposes their confusion. Your calm reveals their anxiety. Your self-trust highlights their self-doubt. You don't need to argue. You don't need to prove anything or win debates. Just being authentically who you are is enough to destabilize false certainty. And in a world addicted to ego validation, comfortable lies, and unexamined beliefs, that makes you quietly dangerous. A threat to the status quo simply by existing. Sign number 8. People open up to you, then suddenly pull away. They tell you their deepest secrets. They say you understand them like no one else ever has. For a brief, beautiful moment, it feels like genuine connection. Like you finally found your people. Then suddenly, without warning, they vanish. They stop texting. They become distant and cold. They make excuses. And you're left sitting there wondering what the hell just happened, what you did wrong. This emotional whiplash isn't your fault. It's the shadow at work. Jung taught that when someone feels truly seen, not just flattered or validated, but understood at their core, seen for who they really are beneath all the masks, it awakens parts of them they've spent years, sometimes decades, avoiding. Your aura didn't hurt them. It revealed them. It pulled back the curtain on truths they weren't ready to face, and that revelation can feel absolutely terrifying for someone not prepared to confront their pain, their trauma, their deeper truth. So they pull away, not because you did something wrong, not because the connection wasn't real, but because you unknowingly unlocked a door they weren't ready to walk through. You didn't break the connection. You made it too real. And for most people, real connection is far more frightening than loneliness. Sign number 9. You intimidate people without trying, especially authority figures. You walk into a room and suddenly the entire power dynamic shifts. Your boss gets defensive. That loud, dominant person who usually controls every conversation suddenly quiets down. People who are used to controlling the narrative start stumbling over their words. You didn't do anything aggressive. You didn't challenge anyone. But your energy broadcasts a clear message. I'm not easily controlled. Jung believed that those who have integrated their inner power, their inner king or queen archetype, radiate what he called quiet sovereignty. It doesn't scream. It doesn't posture. It doesn't need to prove itself. It simply is. And that kind of grounded, authentic presence threatens anyone who builds their identity on dominance, control, or hierarchical power. You might notice that people in authority positions either respect you deeply or subtly resent you. There's rarely middle ground. Because without saying a single word, your aura communicates, you don't hold power over me. Your title doesn't impress me. Your status means nothing to my soul. And for those who rely on fear, manipulation, or status to maintain control over others, that's the most unsettling, threatening thing you could ever communicate. Your refusal to submit, to play the game, to bow down. It threatens their entire identity. Sign number 10. You become the villain in other people's stories. You walk into someone's life with kindness, with honesty, with genuine intentions and no hidden agenda. But somehow, impossibly, you become the villain in their story. They accuse you of being arrogant when you were just confident, cold when you were simply boundaried, too intense when you were just being yourself, too emotional when you were just feeling human feelings. They twist your silence into judgment, your self-respect into ego, your solitude into rejection, your boundaries into cruelty. They rewrite history, edit conversations, reimagine your motivations, and suddenly you're the bad guy in a story you didn't even know you were part of. This isn't about you. It's about projection, a psychological defense mechanism Carl Jung emphasized as one of the most dangerous blind spots in human relationships. When people are unwilling or unable to confront their own flaws, their own darkness, their own shadow, they unconsciously project those rejected parts onto others. They make you the container for everything they hate about themselves. And people with strong auras, deep, developed, spiritually attuned auras, become the perfect screen for these projections because your presence reflects what they're desperately trying to hide. You didn't become the villain. You just refused to play the victim, refused to shrink, refused to apologize for existing. And that disrupted their entire narrative. Sign number 11. Strangers feel drawn to you without knowing why. It happens in the most unexpected places. Grocery stores, coffee shops, airports, waiting rooms. A complete stranger starts talking to you, not about the weather or sports, but deeply, meaningfully. They confess something personal, something raw. They share pain they've been carrying alone. And then they pause, look confused, and say, I don't know why I'm telling you this. I never do this. There's no small talk buffer, no gradual building of trust, just raw emotion pouring out like they've been waiting their entire lives for someone like you to appear. Jung believed that some people carry what he called numinous energy. It's not charisma. It's not charm or social skills. It's the soul's gravitational pull. People sense it operating beneath conscious awareness. They don't know what they're feeling, can't name it, can't explain it, but they feel safe, seen, pulled toward something ancient and sacred in your presence. Your aura operates like a quiet spiritual lighthouse. Even if you're not religious, even if you're not consciously seeking anything, your soul radiates a frequency, and others, especially the lost, the hurting, the seekers, those desperate for real connection, will feel it like a silent calling they can't ignore. Sign number 12. You can feel the energy of a room. Instantly, you step inside a space, a party, a meeting, a family gathering, and within seconds, you know exactly what's off. You feel the tension hanging in the air like humidity. You sense the hidden resentment simmering beneath polite smiles. You pick up on the masks everyone's wearing, the performances they're giving, before a single word is spoken. To others, it seems like you have a sixth sense, some kind of supernatural ability. But in truth, it's your highly developed psychic attunement. Carl Jung described this as psychological intuition, the unconscious intelligence that operates beneath logic, beneath language, beneath rational thought. You don't need verbal explanations. You feel truth in your body. You sense deception in your gut. You don't just observe energy the way others might notice a person seems off. You absorb it. You take it in. You feel it moving through you like a current. This is the double-edged sword of spiritual sensitivity. It gives you access to deeper dimensions of human experience that most people never touch. But it also makes you vulnerable to energetic overwhelm. Your aura is like a highly sensitive antenna, always picking up signals others don't even know they're sending. And unless you're careful, unless you learn to protect yourself, you can end up carrying emotions, traumas, and darkness that were never yours to begin with. Sign number 13. You've always felt not of this world, and others feel it too. There's a loneliness in you that is almost impossible to explain to anyone who does not feel it themselves. Not the loneliness of lacking company or friends, not the loneliness of being physically alone, but the loneliness of being different on a fundamental soul level. The loneliness of seeing things others don't see, feeling things others don't feel, knowing things others refuse to know. Since childhood, you felt like an outsider, even among friends, even in your own family, even in relationships where you were supposedly close to people. It's as if you were born with ancient eyes in a world that only sees the surface, born with depth in a culture that worships shallow. Carl Jung believed that certain individuals are born with what he called a calling from the self, a deep inner voice pulling them toward growth, wholeness, psychological integration, and transformation. These people often live at the edges of society, never quite fitting into the comfortable center. They question what others blindly accept. They see through illusions others believe are reality. They carry wisdom that feels otherworldly, ancient, timeless. Your aura reflects that fundamental difference. It carries depth, mystery, something that stirs the unconscious. Some people are inspired by it, drawn to it like moths to flame. Some are terrified by it, repelled by what they don't understand. But very few can ignore it, because whether they realize it consciously or not, they are in the presence of someone who does not quite belong to this world, but was sent here to change it. The deeper truth. Why your aura triggers others. You've seen it happen again and again. You enter a space and something shifts in the air. People become guarded, distant, awkward, sometimes even hostile or aggressive. And you're left wondering why, searching your memory for what you could have possibly done wrong. You didn't say anything offensive. You weren't trying to dominate the room or draw attention to yourself. You were just being yourself, existing as you are. But that's the exact problem. That's the whole issue right there. Because when your aura carries authenticity, self-awareness, and psychological depth, it challenges people on an unconscious level. It confronts the parts of themselves they have buried deep in their psyche. Carl Jung believed that each of us has a shadow, the hidden side of our personality filled with traits, emotions, and truths we've repressed, denied, or rejected as unacceptable. Most people spend their entire lives avoiding this shadow, running from it, building elaborate defenses against it, creating false identities to hide it. But when someone with an integrated aura, someone who has done the inner work, walks into the room, that shadow gets triggered, activated, brought to the surface. Your presence silently communicates, "I've faced myself. I've looked at my darkness. I've integrated my shadow." Have you? And for those who haven't, for those still hiding, still pretending, still running, this question feels absolutely terrifying. The ego's war against individuation. Jung's core psychological journey was what he called individuation, the path of becoming your truest, most whole self by integrating both light and shadow, conscious and unconscious, persona and authentic self. But here's the brutal truth. Most people never take this journey. They never even begin. Why? Because the ego, our constructed self-image, our carefully curated identity, fiercely resists it with everything it has. The ego doesn't want truth. It wants control, safety, predictability. It wants to believe, "I'm a good person, I'm normal, I'm fine the way I am. I don't need to change or grow or face uncomfortable truths about myself." And anyone who forces it to question that comfortable illusion is automatically perceived as a threat. That's you. You're not threatening because you're aggressive or hostile. You're threatening because you're evolved, because you're further along the path. Your aura reflects someone who is actively in process, someone who has questioned everything, deconstructed themselves, and rebuilt from the inside out. That energy exposes everyone still clinging to their illusions, their comfortable lies, their false selves. And instead of thinking, "Maybe I should grow like that. Maybe I should do that inner work," many will choose the easier path. You're too much. You're the problem. You need to change. Why rare energy feels dangerous. We live in a world that actively rewards conformity and surface-level behavior. Being loud, being agreeable, being trendy, following the script. These traits make people feel comfortable and safe. They know how to respond. They know what to expect. But when someone walks in with silence, stillness, and soul depth, when someone operates from a completely different frequency, they break the unspoken social contract everyone agreed to follow. People don't know how to categorize you. You don't fit their boxes. You don't play the usual games. You don't seek external validation or approval. Your very presence asks an uncomfortable question. What else is there? What exists beyond this performance? What's real underneath all these masks? This creates what psychologists call cognitive dissonance, the uncomfortable psychological tension that arises when someone is forced to confront truths, beliefs, or realities that contradict their existing worldview. That dissonance quickly transforms into repulsion, judgment, or attack. Because it's far easier to label someone as weird, intense, or too much than to admit they're living with more clarity, authenticity, and courage than I am. You are a mirror, and mirrors aren't always welcome. The spiritual depth of your aura reflects people back to themselves with uncomfortable accuracy. To those who are open, who are ready, who are genuinely seeking growth, this feels magnetic. They're drawn to your insight, your calm, your presence. They want to learn from you, be near you, absorb what you've discovered. But to those who are still fragmented, still hiding, still performing, your presence feels invasive, threatening. They don't want to be seen that clearly. They don't want to feel their own confusion, insecurity, shame, or denial. They don't want their masks ripped away, and so they retreat. They attack. They gossip. They reject. Not because you're wrong. Not because you've done anything to them, but because you're real, and your realness exposes their fakeness. Your authenticity highlights their performance. Your integration shows them their fragmentation. Your aura is a gift, but it comes with solitude. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But he also understood something most inspirational quotes leave out. Becoming who you truly are is not a path filled with applause, celebration, or widespread acceptance. It's a path that requires immense courage, brutal self-confrontation, and often deep, aching loneliness. Your aura carries the weight of your inner work. It broadcasts the evidence of your psychological journey. It's not about being better than anyone else. It's not about superiority or judgment. It's about being more whole, more integrated, more authentic, and wholeness will always be rare. It will always be misunderstood by those who haven't begun their own journey. It will always scare those who are still hiding from themselves. But here's the paradox that makes it all worthwhile. The more people pull away, the closer you move toward your true self. And the more aligned you become with that self, the more light you carry into this dark, confused world, even if that light blinds some eyes along the way. A final word. You are not the problem. If you've made it this far, there's something you desperately need to hear, something you need to let sink deep into your consciousness. You are not broken, you are not too much, and you are certainly not the problem. You are rare. You feel the things most people spend their entire lives trying to ignore. You see the patterns most remain blind to. You ask the questions that make others uncomfortable, not because you're trying to stir up trouble or prove you're smarter, but because your soul is built for truth. And that truth comes at a price. Carl Jung believed that walking the path toward wholeness, the path of individuation, is not a journey the masses are willing to take. It's lonely. It's disorienting. It often means walking through life fundamentally misunderstood. But here's the beautiful paradox that makes it worth it. The very thing that isolates you is what proves your depth. The discomfort you feel in shallow conversations, the urge to detach from toxic dynamics, the pain of being called too intense, too quiet, too deep. These aren't flaws in your character. They're signs that you're evolving. They're evidence of growth. Because when your aura expands, when your consciousness develops, the world doesn't expand with you. It shrinks. Most people are born into a mold, told exactly who to be, how to act, what to feel. But your soul was wired differently from the beginning. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to awaken. And with awakening comes resistance, not just from society, but from those closest to you. Not because they're bad people, not because they don't love you, but because your energy reminds them of the work they've been avoiding. You are a mirror they never asked for, a light they're not ready to walk toward, but still you shine, not because you're trying to, but because you can't help it anymore. Carl Jung once wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." And maybe that's the deeper point. Maybe your isolation isn't punishment or evidence that something's wrong with you. Maybe it's preparation for deeper wisdom, for spiritual strength, for the kind of clarity that most people never reach in an entire lifetime. Because when your aura scares people, when your presence makes them uncomfortable, it's often because it speaks a language their soul recognizes but their conscious mind isn't ready to understand yet. Your energy is calling them home to themselves, and that call terrifies them. So don't shrink yourself. Don't dim your light. Don't apologize for your sensitivity, your insight, your inner fire, your refusal to pretend. You are not here to be palatable, comfortable, or easy to digest. You are here to be powerful, authentic, whole, and while others may flinch in your presence, while they may retreat or attack or misunderstand, the ones who are truly meant for you will have a completely different reaction. They'll feel seen, safe, stronger when you walk into the room. They'll recognize the truth in your energy and be grateful for it. Because your aura isn't just energy. It's not just some vague spiritual concept. It's a signal, a call to truth, a reminder of what becomes possible when someone finally dares to be fully alive, fully human, fully themselves. So, the next time someone calls you too much, smile, take a breath, and remember, you're not too much. You're just rare, and rare things have never been understood by the masses. They've only been treasured by those brave enough to look deeper,